Oh, I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure the empty chair was for Noel Clark.
And on that note, hello everyone, welcome back to the Thomas Podcast after about
And that's all we got time for. Yeah.
That's all we got time for. Welcome back to the only show that actually could have outlasted Liz Truss if I didn't post a podcast quickly into her reign. But anyway, I am joined with John, Oshan, who is new, and Beef.
Hello.
How are we doing? And we're here to discuss, obviously, the power of the Doctor and all things with that new Doctor Who being to return to the show and hopefully back to being weekly. We'll see. But guys, first, obviously, big episodes, not only Jodie's regeneration, but the BBC Centenary special. And obviously this time as well, there was a lot more confusion going on with regeneration and what we were going to see, who was going to show up. We really had no idea. And because it's Chibnall Who, it literally could have been anyone because spoilers are very sparse, unless you're on Apple Store, and you can just see an image of the regeneration a week before it's meant to go out.
And you're fluent in German.
Yes. Well, apparently the whole episode didn't leak, though. It was just that image, but I could be mistaken.
Wait, was that actually what the whole regeneration was just on?
There was an image of Jodie on the cliff edge with the regeneration.
Yeah, on Apple iStore, there was literally a thing with like buy this now, and the image was the regeneration on the cliff top.
Oh my word!
But yeah, guys, how are we all? First of all, it's been a while, so I'll go around the room because obviously we've not done a show in a while. So, John, how are we? We good?
I'm a maelstrom of emotions, Alex. I'm on my third Prime Minister in the last 2 months. I'm on my second monarch in the last 2 months. We're probably on about our sixth Watford manager. But yeah, I'm a maelstrom of emotions, as shall be covered. Yeah, I'm good. I actually had a week off last week. To sort of prepare myself for last night's episode. I woke up this morning and realized I probably should have had this week off instead.
Yeah. That Watford thing really threw me away, but I think you could be right, to be honest. They're in a bit of shit. Beef, my friends.
Hello.
How is the world of beef? If that is such a question.
It's extremely chill. I'm on, as opposed to John having several high numbers, I'm on my first drink of the evening, so I'm just relaxed.
This is uncharted territory for you, really.
It's a Monday, as of recording currently, and yeah, everything's good, mate. Do you know what I mean? We had an episode of a television program yesterday, and that was it.
We did, yeah, indeed.
It is Monday. It is also the Festival of Light. So happy Diwali to all of our listeners. And if you hear any fireworks in the background, that's what that is.
Yes, and also welcome to the show, Oshan, who has never been on it. How are you doing? Well, obviously, just to give you an introduction, I know Oshan. We go to uni together in the same class.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. But how are you, my friend? Do you want to have a little chat?
I'm actually very excited to be on the pods. And I think it's a very good episode to discuss. A lot going on. So yeah.
I was worried. If me and Osh have had many a discussion about Doctor Who. I wouldn't say we disagree on everything, but specifically this era, there's been a lot of. We're very good though. We rarely shout at each other, but there was a lot of not seeing eye to eye on certain things.
That is a good point. Yeah,
knowing your opinions, Alex, that's a good thing.
Yes. But hopefully, this it's going to be an interesting discussion. I'm not going to do a.
Before we get into it, how are you, Alex? Because you always ask us, and we never ask Mac. So it's all. I've decided to, the relaunch podcast to see how you are.
I'm good. I'm happy I took a break. I think it's always necessary. I think when you do a lot of things week to week, and I think the reason I took most of the gaps is because in the summer nothing new was coming out. I think that's always the more fun podcast to do. Really, I love doing like the Bond stuff, but I think when you're in a rotation consistently of just backlog, it can sort of take the spice out of it a little bit. Like it's always fun when a new episode of Doctor Who comes out or a new Marvel film comes out, for example, and there was a bit of time where none of that was happening, and I didn't want to talk about She-Hulk for the first few weeks. I found it boring.
And you didn't fancy doing a podcast about the Queen's funeral or anything like that?
I know. I didn't want to live stream reaction to the Queen's funeral, no. But no, I'm okay. A lot of interesting things coming up in the future, which can be exciting. We've got LCC coming up It's gonna be fun. Lots of things happening that weekend. A new vlog will be out because I'm actually doing stuff at LCC this time rather than just nothing like I did in the summer, which is why there was no vlog. So you'll get a vlog this time. But no, I'm good, mate.
I'd like to use my commentary for your blog again because I know that the
Oh,
LCC winter or spring that went down a storm.
Yeah, I wonder how many other politicians will be cosplayed this time around. Any Liz Truss?
I mean, your Tories do always dress a little bit funny, so you never know that there could be a few knocking around. I mean,
Exactly.
I've seen Boris's before. I'm sure there was a Boris knocking around when we were at LCC Spring, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, I think there
Yeah.
was.
There was.
Yeah, I've seen Boris's before, and you know, I saw somebody cosplaying President Bartlett. Oh no, that was actually Martin Sheen. But it's
Jesus.
yeah, we might get some trussy cosplayers. You know, we could get some Dishy Rishi cosplayers.
Yep.
We might get more Borises. Who knows?
It's literally like the Watford managers. It's an open pool of different people that you want to go to now. I'm going to say this.
The only difference is that unlike the Watford managers, they're all cunts.
Exactly, I concur. Right, I'm going to say this from the off. Spoilers ahoy! So if you don't like spoilers and somehow you've avoided them and you want to listen to this, sorry, go watch the episode first because.
Are there any places where it's not been broadcast now?
I don't think there is.
I mean, to be fair, spoilers ahoy! Anybody that's watching this on YouTube is literally like fucked already.
Or as Beef pointed out, or if Beef pointed out earlier, if you live in Germany. So, anyway, we're going to get into this. I'm not going to do a plot. I'm not going to get John to do a plot breakdown this one because he would be here for a decade and a half.
I mean, I can do a really quick one if you want me to.
Sure.
Okay, so we've got a bullet train. Got a bullet train going through space, which is attacked by Cybermen, which turn out to be Cybermasters. They are essentially attacking it in order to get the cargo. When they get the cargo open, it's a little child in there that the Cybermen kidnap. Back on Earth, Dan basically decides to pull a bit of a Tegan and goes, "No, I've had enough. I need to sort my life out," because he nearly dies during the bullet train thing. Meanwhile, Ace is in an art gallery. There is not a curator. It is not Tom Baker. It is not Bill Nye. It's just Ace and a rather tall woman. And Ace asks where the picture that she's looking at, which is now a blank space, has gone to. And they say, "Oh, that's been restored." And she went, "Well, that was restored about 2 months ago, wasn't it?" And they say, "Oh yeah,
Ace has too much time on her hands.
It needed some more restoration." I mean, I'm sorry if there was. Well, I mean, we'll get onto my views on the characterization of this Ace. But yes, apparently it turns out that there are about 15 pictures that have gone missing. She gets on the phone to one of her besties and, call blimey, rabbits, it's Tegan Javanka. Tegan Javanka is in Romania. She's trying to find out where seismologists have disappeared to. We then go back to 1916 Russia and the Winter Palace. Rasputin has been called to see the Tsar and the Tsarina, but holy fuck, it's not Rasputin, it's the Master. Kids, I know you're all historians, I know you all study your history, you'd all be well aware that 1916 is actually the year that Rasputin died, which could time explains a lot. So yeah, the Master's kind of hypnotized the Tsar and the Tsarina. He sends them packing with the little baby kitty Tsar who's got haemophilia, because that's what happens when you shag your cousins. It is. Well, it's one of the things, along with like toes and fingers and webbed bits and stuff. That's why they call it the royal disease. It was, it was all related to interbreeding. So yeah, he packs them off. The Doctor then comes down to Earth and goes to see Unit, but not before she sees a hologram of the Dalek in the TARDIS, which tells her, "Come and have a meeting." But she goes, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that quite yet." Goes to Unit, meets Kate Stewart. Kate goes, "Got a couple of mates of yours that are working for us," and it's Tegan and Ace, and they're there in the Unit HQ. And it's all a little bit awkward because they're like, "Where the fuck have you been for 30, 40 years?" And the doctor's giving off a bit of static, and because it's a Chibnall script, it says, "Oh, you can hit me a bit of static." So then it turns out that the seismologists are all disappearing, and the portraits have all gone missing because they've all had Rasputin's face stuck on them, except it's not Rasputin's face, it's the Master's. And they're like, "Oh, what's going on here?" And then the Master turns up on screen. He goes, "Hello, this is my little plan.
World shittest memes. Yeah.
Yeah, please come and arrest me." So they go to Russia. They do indeed take him away. They take him back to unit headquarters. They take him down into the basement. But of course, it's a trap because it's the Master, and he's actually left a little cyber dolly upstairs that he gets to Tegan, and that results in the cyber dolly growing big and being a cyber Russian dolly, and loads of Cybermen coming out, and the Cybermen taking over unit headquarters.
Pew pew bang bang.
With Kate, Tegan, and Ace inside. Meanwhile, there's a massive, great big fuck off metal planet somewhere in space just outside of the Earth.
For reasons.
And the child is tethered to the planet. We know this because Mr. Chibnall's very helpful script says the child's tethered to the planet. Why? Who knows? Maybe we'll find out at some point. The Cybermen turn up there. Our old friend Vinda crashes a spaceship onto it. Back down on Earth, it's all going a bit tits up. Ace jumps off of the roof with a parachute that she's buried in the unit headquarters. Ashard, shooty, not shooty, but shooty with a gun.
Shooty bang bangs.
shooty bang bang, not shooty cat. Well, we might come on to that. Shooty bang bang through the windows, splits Ace's parachute. Oh no, Ace is going to fall to her death. But no, TARDIS lands, door open. Ace falls through the TARDIS door into the TARDIS, looks at Yaz and goes, "How the fuck are you able to do that? They never let me fly it." Because, of course, every single companion has to be jealous of other companions. It's the way that it works. It's why you never have a party with all of your exes. And they decide to go and drop Ace off on a planet with volcanoes and Daleks, where Ace meets Graham, and they have a bit of cockney bants between the two of them, and then decide to go off and kill some Daleks with Nitro 9 and shit like that. Meanwhile, Tegan is in unit headquarters. She's trying to resolve the whole sort of situation, and the Doctor is still in Russia with the Master, where he's trying to force a regeneration because he's got the big planet and Cybermen and Daleks working with him, and for reasons that all means that he can force a regeneration. So he's got like two booths, and it's a bit like the Jeff Goldblum film The Fly, but with like less.
It's a bit like Naked Attraction.
Oh please!
with what the view? What with who? Oh, that's just no,
not that image.
No.
Anyway, he succeeds. He forces a regeneration. He overtakes the Doctor's body. He then goes into the TARDIS, and he comes out in like a hodgepodge of costumes, which everybody's going to be cosplaying from now on. And it's all a bit mental, really.
Yeah.
So then they now have to try to work out a way to degenerate the Doctor. But when all the sparks were going off and she was giving people static, because we know that, because they're saying, "Oh, you gave me static," she was actually implanting little hologram things in people. So though she's regenerated, she's turning up as a hologram and giving people a bit of guidance along the way. The actual Doctor herself finds herself next to a telegraph pole on the side of a cliff, because yeah, of course you put telegraph poles on the side of a cliff. If there's one place that you really need a fucking landline telephone, it's the side of a cliff with no fucking houses and buildings or phone boxes anywhere near it. But so yeah, she's a telegraph pole on the side of the cliff, and somebody goes, "Well, hello," and it's David Bradley, and then it's Colin Baker, and then it's Peter Davison, and then it's Sylvester McCoy, and then it's Paul McGann, and they're all there in its previous incarnations, and it's fucking brilliant.
They say this bus stop shit.
And then, yeah, and Colin literally goes, I missed my flight and there's no buses
guess
going
I'm
back
stuck
to the
here.
hotel. Yeah, I'm stuck right here, and there's not even a fucking Greg's anywhere in sight.
Before we continue, do we know if he got back all right now?
I'm assuming he
Big
got
Carl.
back to the hotel.
I've heard it was resolved.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
Cool.
but yeah, so like literally worst place for a telegraph pole anywhere. And yet there's like 6 incarnations of the Doctor all sitting around a telegraph pole. There's probably a phone box joke there somewhere, but I didn't have time to think of one because it was all a bit madcap. Anyway, back at unit headquarters, hologram Doctor then appears with Tegan and then appears as hologram 5th Doctor, and I'm not going to say any more about that because there's a bit of a lump in my throat. And then hologram Doctor appears with Ace, and it's hologram 7th Doctor, and I'm not going to say anything more about that because it's a bit of a lump in my throat. And anyway, Kate has been taken by the Cybermen. She's struck a deal to release all the unit soldiers so that they can convert her. Of course, she's just buying fucking time. Tegan unplugs the
Wi-Fi.
the Wi-Fi.
She restarts the router. Yeah.
Tegan unplugs the regeneration, the conversion thing, and fucks them all over. Absolutely. Back in Russia, Yaz and the Master are like, the Master's like, I've got you now. We're surrounded by Cybermen. And she goes, you haven't counted on her. And the fugitive Doctor walks in, except it's a hologram of the fugitive Doctor, except the Cybermen are fucking stupid and they don't realize it is, so they all shoot each other. But because they're Cyber Masters, they're full of regeneration energy, and the regeneration energy goes back into the machine. It degenerates the Doctor, and she reappears. And then it all gets a bit mad, and the unit headquarters blows up. And somehow we get into a situation where in the TARDIS, we've got Yaz, we've got Vinda, we've got Graham, we've got Kate, we've got Ace, we've got Tegan, we've got the Doctor, and it's all fucking mental. And she sits there and goes, oh, we've got these volcanoes that are all exploding, and we've got this planet that's there for no reason with a tethered child and a Kravix, whatever that thing, a Kravis? Yeah, Kravisk.
Big glowing thing.
Yeah, it's called a Kravisk, I think. But it's a big glowing energy bolt that she says, I've never seen one like that before, but it looks
But it looked like that.
Yeah, it looks a bit like fucking Mandragora, to be honest. So she has come across one before, she just forgot about it. And then she goes, oh, I know what I can do. I can reverse things and fill up the volcanoes with steel from this planet and turn them into works of art, and it's beautiful. And then she goes to release the Kravis, which is good. It rhymes. It could be like a catchphrase from a game show or something. Release the Kravis. Release the Kravis. It's something that I know a few people that probably do that on a Friday night. They release the Kravis. And the Kravis is explored. But anyway, so she goes to release a Kravis, and there's a beam of energy coming down to Kravis onto the planet, but the Master is not quite dead yet. And he goes, hold up a second. Clicks a button on his little metal thing, and the beam of the Kravis hits the Doctor. And Yaz walks out of the TARDIS and picks her up and takes her back into the TARDIS. And then the Doctor wakes up in the TARDIS, and she goes, where is everyone? And Yaz is like, I took them all home. Well, I took them to Croydon. Which, I mean, it's probably more dangerous than a fucking planet with a Kravis and a Master on it, to be honest. I've been to Croydon. You took them to the one place where you can't actually walk into a cab office and get a cab. You've got to phone them up so that you don't rob the tabs. She took them to the one place that you don't get Jehovah's Witnesses, you get Jehovah's bystanders. And so it's just the Doctor and Yaz, and it's quite clear that something ain't right, and that the Doctor knows that she's kind of on her way out. And there's quite an emotional moment between the Doctor and Yaz, and she basically says, look, we're going to have one last date and we're going to sit and eat ice cream. And they sit and eat ice cream and they watch the planet while they eat ice cream. And then the doctor said, I've got to do this last bit myself. And so she drops Yaz off. And when she drops Yaz off in the park, Yaz meets Dan and Graham. And they basically say, right, you're coming with us, love. And in what is one of the best moments in 59 years of this television show, there's a big room with Dan and Graham and Yaz, and they're talking to Ace and Tegan, and then Mel's there, and then Ian Chesterton's there, and then Joe Grant's there, and it's a room full of the people that are available on Earth that have been companions of the Doctor. And there's an empty chair, and we go to a regeneration, which is intercut with moments of the companions talking to each other, and the Doctor leaves the TARDIS and she goes to the edge of a cliff and she says, tag, you're it, and regenerates, and then a new Doctor arrives. And it's David Tennant, and he goes, I recognise these teeth. And he says, what? And your credits roll.
I'd say, John, very well done. That was impeccable. Yeah,
but that's what we like, a nice, straightforward story.
Don't take the piss. That took me about 5 minutes.
That was very good.
That was no, there's not besmirching your retelling of the tale. It's just
I would challenge anyone to do that unprepared.
yeah.
Right, I'm gonna open the floor first. I'll ask you this because obviously you've been on the show before and you have been critical of, let's say, not hypercritical. You have given the show its praise when it's you think it's legitimately deserved it. But for this Jodie's Regeneration centenary of the show, did it disappoint? Before you go into its actual quality and maybe the nitty gritty, did it disappoint? Did you get something out of this?
I think, if I was honest, I went into this with very low expectations. And that's not being harsh. It's just, I've been burned before. So I think you've got to look at this in two different ways, because we had a chat last night about this, because it's two things. It's an anniversary special and it's a regeneration story. Yeah, did I get stuff out of it? Yeah, it was good because there was fan service paid to it. Yeah, there was a regeneration, but the story was, I still stand by it. I still think the story is needlessly overcomplicated and a mess. I think when you do a rewatch, the holes in the sweater get bigger, because when you watch it on the initial rewatch, it's very fast paced and everything like that. So there's not time to catch it. It's just like oh, and then jump into everything like that. But there are a lot, I think, of flaws to it. I think from the anniversary side, yes, it delivered as a regeneration story and a culmination to a Doctor's tenure. If I'm really honest about it, I feel it underdelivered.
Cool. Osh, let's go to you first. This first opinion. So you can. By the way, I will say this is a safe space. You can be honest. We may disagree on certain things, but you can say whatever you like. I've certainly said a whole lot of shit on this show, so feel free to say whatever you want.
The thing that happens here is I call you a cunt, and that's going to happen. So
I watched this episode twice. I watched it when it was aired, and then I watched it like an hour after to process everything, and then I watched it again. The first time I watched it, I loved the last 10 minutes. I think the last 10 minutes are absolutely brilliant. Like even stuff that I don't really care too much about in this era. I just loved everything about it. But I didn't really like it at all. But on the second rewatch, I liked a lot more things. But I still have issues with the episode. As like Beef said, I think that I think it's a very good anniversary. It's a very good celebration episode for the BBC. I think it does a lot for the classic era for the show and all this and that. But I think as a conclusion to Jodie's era, I wanted more for Jodie, if that makes sense. But yeah,
Cool.
so I think it did. I don't know. I had fun watching it. That's something. I'll give it to Chibnall. I actually had fun watching this episode. And yeah.
Yeah, I'll go next. I'll give John a little break because he spoke for a good 5 to 7 there. I'm going to say this. I saw the first time I watched it. I thought it was perfect. I watched it a second time. I thought it was even better. I watched it a third time. I still love it. Is this structurally...
Point of order, you can't get better than perfect.
I know, somehow it did though. Structurally, is this great? No. Is it flawed? Absolutely. Do I really care? No. Do I come from an emotional place where I love this era and kind of don't really give a shit? Yeah, I've seen The Time of the Doctor. Is that a good story? It's up for debate. Even Matt Smith kind of implied didn't like it, but I think that's probably the best regeneration story we've had. Yeah, I think, when it comes to regeneration stories, you kind of care more about the ones where a doctor you love goes, unless I think that is kind of the word land. I don't really like End of Time, yet some stands will tell me it's the best thing since sliced bread. But for me, this worked for me on a level that I don't know. I don't know if I could ever describe it in a certain sense. It's the first time I watched Doctor Who with other people as well. So I was watching it with Gareth Abraham 97, who usually pops on here a lot, and Adam. And this era has obviously meant a lot to me as well, because it's where I met this lovely lot of people. And we've come together through this era of the show. So it means a lot to me to see it go. And obviously Jodie's been here since the pandemic and since I started uni. So a lot of things have happened since it started. So I've had a lot of connection to this.
It's gone very quick. It's gone very quick though.
It worked for me as a mega fan of the era and a fan of Doctor Who. It worked for me. But I understand what people are saying. I'm not sat there going, oh, no, it is flawless. I just think for me, if you asked on the entertainment scale, did I get a 10 out of 10 entertainment from it? Yeah, and I've seen it 3 times. So I don't know if it'll stick over time, but it did everything I wanted it to be honest. And now to you, John.
I've watched this twice. I watched it last night. I watched it again earlier this evening because I wanted to give it another go and kind of be sure of what I thought. I completely agree that as an anniversary special, although it's a BBC anniversary and not a Doctor Who anniversary, and we've got another anniversary coming next year, so it feels like a little bit of a fake anniversary. But as an anniversary special, it absolutely delivered. It gave exactly what we wanted. It gave the right kind of nods to classic era people. And it wasn't just about the cameos. There were some really lovely references in the scripts. And, there were like little Easter eggs for long-term fans that wouldn't be jarring to people that weren't long-term fans. It was really beautiful in that aspect. In terms of a regeneration story, I come at this slightly differently, because for me, a regeneration story, it's not even necessarily about telling a story. It's about celebrating an era and giving the outgoing Doctor and or companion the opportunity to be celebrated and show what they can do. Generally speaking, 1 or 2 things happens with regeneration stories. You either get a 10 out of 10 Stone Cold classic, like Coves of Androzani, like the War Games, like Parting of the Waves, or you get something that's a bit shit. As you all know, I've not been the biggest fan of this era. I love Jodie. I think that she's brilliant, but I do have some quite serious issues with the way it's been written, the way it's been constructed. It's just been all over the place. I have to say, I thought that last night, from the perspective of celebrating Jodie, was almost perfect. It was one of her best performances in the role. I think it was Mandip Gill's best performance in 5 years on the show, because she actually had something to do. It was a wonderful celebration of some of the best things from this era, i.e. Jodie, Sasha, the returning monsters that Chris has been really good with. in another way, it was also a perfect celebration of Chibnall because it made absolutely no sense and it was full of fucking exposition. But I don't care because I came out of this with like a 90-minute emotional roller coaster and smiling all over my face. Because finally, what I've wanted to see for 4 years, this wonderful actress be given something to do and actually be able to boss it and get her teeth into something, it's finally fucking happened. So for me, loved it.
Right, this is one of the weirdest podcasts to do because I don't know where to jump in. Right, I think we'll leave all the cool cameos and stuff to the end. Let's talk about the story first, because I think there might be some tears when it comes to cameos and stuff like that, and certain moments, and there might be some emotions flying. So we'll save that towards the end of the pod. Right, for me, the story, does it make much sense? Is it a bit confusing? Yeah. Essentially, Dewan's timeline is still a bit confusing to me within this. But I'm going to say this sentence might make absolutely no fucking sense. It might be a bit confusing, but he does such a good job that I genuinely don't care. I think he's so good in this that I don't care what kind of order this kind of fits within his timeline. I have my own headcanon. But let's talk about the Master's plot, which people have said is overcomplicated, and I will grant you that. It is a bit sort of, you have to keep up, otherwise you just could get lost. But like John said, I think it's a fun plot, which is kind of nice in the Chibnall era to have fun with a plot and go, this is batshit, but I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing on screen. So what do we make of Dewan's plan of becoming the Doctor, literally? Are we a fan of that?
I mean, it very much harks back to Ainley, doesn't it? You know, that was always the Ainley thing. It was like, I'm going to steal your regenerations. So it worked. It worked for me because it was very much a sort of master thing to do. You know, it takes you back to Pratt and Beavers and Ainley.
Yeah. What about you guys? Oshan, what did you think? Because I think this might be where your contention lies. Oh, it could be wrong though.
I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. The Master stuff in this episode, I was really intrigued because I've never really been a big fan of Sacha Stewart. It's not that I've not been a big fan of him. I think he's a great actor, and I think he does deliver like a kind of, he rolls on the old classic Masters. But I just think that the episodes he's been, even though Spyfall, I think I did kind of enjoy. He's not really hit me like that, but in this episode, I think it was very good. And I think that his plot was a concept that I think was interesting and landed. I think it was wild. It was fucking crazy, but that's the stuff I wanted to see. And when it cut to everything else, I was like, I don't really want to, I want to continue with this sort of stuff. But yeah.
What about you, Beef?
Yeah, look, Dewan's crazy and choose the scenery and everything like that. I like that. I like the wild and unpredictable side that you can't take. It's weird because the thing is that one season that we've had, the Master just basically saying, I hate you and everything like that, and I'm going to, torment you about the timeless child. And you can't talk about this without addressing it. And then that if that's an overarching thing of the Master's, part of the Master's motivation up until where we get to now, and there's no resolution to that does throw it up. I don't understand why he had to be caught and put into the base unit, because the Cybermen were already there. So they didn't need him to have him there.
My point of contention would be the Master likes a showboat. He likes a showboat, especially towards unit. We get that brilliant line from Darwin where he says to Kate Stewart, your dad was an idiot, which is I'm going to say it's tremendous. It's the biggest dickhead thing you can say, especially to a John Pertwee era fan or any Classic Who fan. But it was a tremendously given line. I'm also a big fan of the line, "Darling, I don't have the room service menu." I don't know why. Every time I watch the episode, it just makes me crack up. No, I think the Master likes a showboat, and I think the Master never follows a plan that always would make the most logistical sense because he likes to be the loudest person in the room.
What would I have liked dramatically? I would have liked more interplay between the Doctor and the Master, because if you go back to the Timeless Child, one of the fair criticisms of that was that it was a lot of the Master and Sacha Dhawan doing the heavy lifting and the acting on that. He was acting at her, and there was not very much coming back from the Doctor. There wasn't much of that in evidence in that episode last night, and there's one basic line that when it's her and Yaz in the TARDIS, and it was like, him and me used to be friends, and it's sort of like, well, where's the second sentence that comes after that? It would have been nice to have had that viewpoint of how the Doctor viewed the relationship with the Master. So I mean, with regards to that, it's sort of, yeah, okay, we're going to do a degeneration thing. I think it's just it's giving the Master a bit of a run, but it's sort of taking it's doing it at the expense of taking Jodie out of the story in actually doing stuff.
I don't entirely agree with that one, mate. I'm going to be honest.
Why was the Master Rasputin? Like, what does the Master being Rasputin play into the story? Like, why did he have to be in that room? Like, what was that all about?
We get a banging dance, mate.
Yeah, okay, the banging dance, I get it. But like, what was the why? Why then? Why that time? Why him? Like, did we never get
vibes in it? No, I think it might have something to do with the correlation of where everything is, because there was like the wormhole or something, wasn't it, that opened up that powered it and things, and the planet was specifically there in that year or something. I don't really know, mate. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. That's with me being silly. I don't know if John can.
There's no explanation for it. So all you'd really need to do is hypothesize. What I would suggest is that having it kind of pre-1950s would mean that there isn't a unit, there isn't so there's nothing there that's going to detect what this actual planet in the sky is.
I think for the first time, I actually needed exposition from Chibnall to explain why he was there.
My supposition would be that they've taken it kind of pre-1950s, 1960s, because nobody can send a rocket up to fucking investigate this, or whatever. And I think they've taken it back to 1916 because obviously Rasputin's an interesting historical figure, and from a narrative perspective, it makes it interesting to have the Master as Rasputin. It's not, it's not kind of the first time that he's inserted himself into kind of gentry or into high society. He did it in Atlantis and the Time Monster. He did it in the King's Demons. So it is a little bit of a thing that the Master's done in the past, where he's kind of, this is the first time he's done it in established history, but it's something that he has got a little habit of doing, just pushing himself into high society and playing with people.
Yeah, even I suppose you can even say Last of Time Lord, Utopia. That's what so like he becomes a new person.
He was like a prime minister at some point. So he loves that power, and it with Rasputin, it could just be that craze for power that's led him to do it.
Point.
Yeah, I've got to give kudos to Dhawan though. I think in this, I've been giving kudos to a lot of people that are in the cast in this one, but I think he especially has a very, I'm going to say strange point. I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean that in the best way possible, because there's so many layers to it. You have the evil side of it, but you also have the moments where you can see his soul a little bit, like when he's degenerating. He says, "Don't let me go back to being me." and it opens up the Master's character a bit and goes, the Master wanted to be better in a weird way. The Master wanted to feel like the Doctor, wanted to feel like the hero, wanted to be good, which opens up that entire can of worms. And it's a side that you can sort of read into Dewan's performance a little bit, and the Master all the time. And we sort of Missy as well. And I think it was a great performance overall. I've made no secret that I think he is up there with Gomez for me as the best Master of the modern series. And I think overall, if there's one thing that I'd love to continue on, I don't think he will, but if there's one thing I'd love to continue on post RTD from this era, it would be, I wouldn't mind seeing him pop up again.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some fun, shall we? The unit stuff, the lovely new unit building. No, wasn't it nice while it lasted? Really cool to see Kate Stewart doing something.
Yeah, exactly. At least she did stuff this time. It was kind of like,
yeah, she wasn't just there. Obviously, this is where we get our lead into Tegan and Ace, Sophie Aldred and Janet Fielding back again. Both of them in a big role as well. Obviously, we knew that they were the two front runners, but we didn't know whether that was because they get introduced early, so it was easier to introduce them, or whether they are just the main two. And it turns out, yes, they are just the main two companions for the first two acts, anyway. I'm going to be honest, they're the right two to pick from the classic years. I mean, I would love to have seen Katie more, but we've already got a bit of Katie and Sarah Jane adventures. I think Ace is a character that people just love anyway, and would love to see more of Ace. And Janet Fielding is the surprise of the episode for me. She killed it as Tegan Jovanka. Not that she wasn't brilliant anyway, but she was, I think, sublime. I don't know about you guys.
I have to come out of the blue. I'm a New Who watcher. I've watched a few of the classics, and I know all the references and stuff. I understood them and all this and that. Like I've stuff in encyclopedias, and I've watched Doctor Who like YouTube videos, and I've seen all this and that. So I wasn't, I did know who these characters were. They were. I really liked Ace. I think Ace was very good. I think Tegan was alright. I think obviously, like I've not seen many episodes with her in it. I think I'm not sure if it was just the writing or maybe her, but she had really cheesy dialogue. And the deliveries weren't perfect all the time, but I mean, she was okay. She was all right. But yeah, that's how I view both of them.
That's absolutely fine. I'm going to entirely disagree with you on that one, mate. Tegan is a fan or favorite of mine anyway. I think in this one, it could possibly be one of her strongest performances, honestly. We'll get into the scene with Davison later on, because I think that's going to be
I'd flip that totally on its head. Obviously, when the two were announced, a lot of the hype was for Sophie and Ace, because Ace is a very iconic, very popular companion. She was the last companion of the classic era, so she was the one that kind of carried through into the wilderness years, if you like. She was the poster child of all that. She was young and accessible and cool for people.
She was held as the template for what became the modern companion, wasn't it?
What was that? And kind of, so she got a lot of the hype when the two of them were revealed. I'm over the moon that actually Janet had a lot more to do last night than Sophie, because when, in terms of the two characters and their circumstances, there's a lot more between Tegan and the Doctor that needs to be covered than there is between Ace and the Doctor, because if you go into the Ace and the Doctor stuff, you have to go into the kind of Virgin novels and a lot of expanded media that the vast majority of people watching last night just won't know about. I think that Janet Fielding absolutely smashed it out of the park last night. I think that she, not entirely to my surprise, she stole the show. She was the best thing about last night's episode, because actually when you know the backstory and the kind of the guilt and anger that she carried around through certain things never being addressed, and that she's carried that around for 40 years, last night was a payoff of that, and she was absolutely astounding. She was beautiful.
Yeah, there was depth to Tegan. which I don't think was present with Ace. You had a lot more, like John said, a lot more emotion. There's a lot more baggage. And it was just, it was extremely well done. I think, insofar as, out of the two, she was certainly the strongest out of the pair, and, very rightly so.
She had a lot more to work with.
Yeah, and I think as well, like John said, Arsha, I know one of your, I wouldn't say your biggest complaints, but one of your biggest sort of like things that you possibly want to discuss is the gap of knowledge between new series fans and classic, and if it's too much. And I know obviously you watch it with some people that had no idea what was going on really, but like John said, there is a level of expectation with being able to watch Doctor Who. It's like, for example, the Star Wars films, right? You've seen if people watch the new trilogy, they should watch the old stuff first. And you have to watch everything. Like you said, you have a base idea. I think they handled it very well because you kind of got the cliff notes of where they left off, who they are, how they interact, and they just got put in the story.
It didn't make it to the exclusion of anyone, though. I think it was a very quick bullet-pointed way that it was done, but effective, because it's sort of like it didn't dwell on it too long that it alienated anyone who's not familiar with it.
Yeah, I think it rewarded classic fans without alienating those that aren't so well versed.
So I watched this episode with my girlfriend, who's only watched New Who, and I didn't even tell her she's not watched anything classic. And throughout the whole show, she's kind of understood, this and there about when classic stuff gets mentioned and brought back, it's kind of explained in the episode. With this, however, it did take her some time to realize that Tegan and Ace were old companions. I mean, she did, even with, but it did take her some time to kind of understand who they were. So they didn't I don't think she was affected that much with them. Being said, even saying that, the whole thing with Peter Davidson, which we'll go on to later, and Sylvester McCoy, she found were very sweet, even though she didn't really have any connections with these companions. So she kind of understood them. But I think it was, I think it is a complaint for me in this episode, as a new, no, it's not a complaint. It's just it's a question of why now why were they in Jodie's last episode when it should, like I said, it's a great anniversary for the BBC, but I think for Jodie's last episode, these characters were probably not suited for this.
I'm going to argue with you that Jodie's the right Doctor to do it with, because Jodie's the one that finds social awkwardness a thing, as she does. John will put, we'll talk about with the regeneration, that she wants to do it alone and things like that. Is that I think Jodie's the right person to do this with, because she really struggles with social situations. And again, the Master plays off that when he goes, "You're going to leave him again, Doctor," and all this sort of stuff. It's part of the the ethos.
I think, I agree with that. This is, it's something that we'll come on to when we talk about Thasmin stuff, I don't doubt. But, for me, this is a Doctor who has been more closed off than the vast majority of other Doctors. She hasn't shared with her companions. She's kept a lot to herself. She doesn't handle emotional situations well. So to actually have two former incarnations come and address some brutally emotional things with classic companions, I think it gives you a really good contrast in terms of I think it gives you a really good contrast in terms of how Yaz in particular is treated compared to other companions, and I'm sure we'll come on to more on that in terms of the final scenes as well. But yeah, I think it really works for me as a kind of two sides of the same coin, if you like.
Yeah. All right. Let's speak of companions. Let's talk about our one of our companions, Dan Lewis, who does, I'm not gonna say who he exits the story, and I might be in the minority here, but I think it was the right time to go. And I mean this I don't know what he would have done within the story. I think the bullet train sequence, I know because I mentioned this because I spoke to you last night, Beef, and I know we disagree on this. I think the bullet train sequence was necessary to give Dan an out. I think if you started with Dan just leaving, it wouldn't have made much sense. And I think it was the perfect one. We get nice little nods to him having a date with Diane, who I love that couple, and I'm happy that they got the happy ending and he went on the date. I think it was the right time for him to go, mainly because I'm happy that Yaz got her story with as the main companion and just her in a obviously we had other companions there, but Yaz finally took that assertive role. And if Dan was there, he just would be a distraction. Because at the end of the day, I don't think this is not a deserved thing, but I think that it was nice that Ace and Tegan got the role. Dan's been a really good side character. I have loved John Bishop in the role. He's not going to be a companion that we just throw under the bus. I think everyone unanimously has enjoyed his time. Whether they think his character has developed enough or not is another story. And I'm happy that he got his moment at the end as well. And I think I'm happy he got his happy ending. I think it's nice that he got that.
It's also practical because he was touring while they were filming this, so he probably had limited availability at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think it was only right that Jodie's final episode does have Mandip as the main companion, without Dan sort of there as a third wheel. And I liked how they did it. I liked that he basically turned around and went, you know what? I've really enjoyed it, but I need to sort my life out. And you've enabled me to do that. And what it also does is it gives you that little bit of foreshadowing that, yeah, again, this is a doctor that doesn't do goodbyes. It's a doctor that doesn't do emotional situations.
Yep. And I loved, I know it's only a little bit of line, but I loved the whole, I'll text you, and the answer is I'll ghost you. Because I think the one thing, this is my biggest complaint, one of my biggest complaints with Flux is their lack and their dismiss of Jericho, Professor Jericho, who dies, who obviously I spent years with during the Flux. But with those two, you do see that connection in the next two specials. You see how they have been friends for years. So I think it's actually kind of nice that Yaz gets the final goodbye with Dan rather than Jodie.
I mean, it's worth bearing in mind that Dan essentially isn't the Doctor's companion; he's Yaz's.
There's that. Yeah. Would I like to have seen more of Dan? Yeah, I would. I think you could have still had him be Earthbound and providing help from an Earthbound point of view. So showing up in some other respects. Rather than just like dashing him out of the story too much. I just think, yeah, just like, oh, right, okay, thanks, fuck off.
Or replace him with what Bradley Walsh was doing. At least give him something. Like, because I think that like bringing Bradley back and him kind of Dan leaving and just bringing Bradley back just was so. It was just like I think his exit was very quick. It was so quick. I understand why, obviously, because of the train stuff, but I think if they were to get rid of him, they should have got rid of him maybe at the end of Flux or at the end of one of the two specials. I mean, I'm glad, like I said, we had Yaz because she really grew on me in this episode. I think she was brilliant. And we always needed that too. I think that's what we always needed, Yaz and the Doctor, because that dynamic, I think, does work. But with someone else, I think it just doesn't, like, I think Dan being there doesn't really work. But if they were to use him in this episode, he probably should have maybe replaced, Bradley Walsh. Was it? Yeah, Graham's role.
Right, good old Graham. Yeah, I think John might have a point there with the practicality. I think he was touring because obviously they were filming this as the world was going back up.
He was touring around sort of October, November last year.
Right.
I mean, it's also worth bearing in mind that from Graham's perspective, when Graham left, he always said, I'm going to defend the Earth from down here. So he was always going to stay involved. Sort of him and Ryan ostensibly were always going to stay involved. So yeah, it seemed right that Graham was involved. I kind of wish it explained how the fuck he ended up on that planet. But
isn't the volcanoes on Earth, isn't it? The volcanoes on Earth, isn't it?
Yes.
I thought Yaz transported him there, but I don't know.
How did he get there? How did he get there?
He didn't. He just appeared.
No, he did it, mate. That's he's doing it, mate. He did it.
How does a 61-year-old bus driver with a West Ham scarf and a fucking packed lunchbox end up at the bottom of a volcano?
Inside a volcano with
been playing a lot of Minecraft.
It's a volcano full of Daleks. He's got no weapons, and he's at the fucking bottom of it. How many Daleks has he gone past to get down there?
Yeah, that is a shark jump. But I'm going to admit, again, at this point, I was riding on the high of the episode, which Chibnall may have been relying on us to at points. But yeah,
I mean, I will say it was worth it for the scenes between Bradders and Sophie, because the chemistry between them was great, and the way they bounced off each other. And if I was Nick Briggs, I'd be sitting there with a blank contract this morning, writing off to the producers of the Chase saying, "Please come and do 4 box sets with me."
yeah. Okay, I think Graham also being in it as well. When you guys mentioned this being a celebration of Jodie, you have to have them in it, I think, because especially with this being Chibnall's era, is his only Doctor, his only set of group of characters. It also fits in with his, Jodie's last quote of "Nobody ever got to be us." So to have him in it, I think is really good. I like the fact he didn't overshadow Yaz.
He
wasn't in it much. That's the thing. He literally wasn't in it much.
It was nice to see Tosin as. Oh no, that was a floor tile that Ace pulled up off the floor, wasn't it?
Oh, poor Tosin. He's a lovely man.
Got chips though.
He's got chips though. That's what he was doing in this episode. He's eating chips.
Rather than being in Patagonia, where, like, to my knowledge, chips are not very available, he should have been down the chippy.
Trying to ride that bike.
Yeah, trying to ride that bike.
Yeah, I mean, again, like maybe he learned to ride the bike, and so now he's decided to go and ride it through
cycling to Patagonia,
through the Patagonian rainforest, or whatever. Like a bit of rougher terrain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Patagonia.
For Christ alive. Right, before we get on to the main bits we'll talk about, and we'll leave cameras as I said. Let's talk about our villains here. So Cybermen, our Shard's back, but not really. It's a clone of the Shard, so it's not really a Shard. I thought this one was the only one where I went, all right, I guess. It's the iconography. I love the look of Ashad. When I was thinking, I was like, how is Chibnall going to write this around that Ashad's working for the Master again? Oh, it's a clone of him. All right, then. I love the Russian doll idea. I thought that was really cool. We're seeing just one side man open and they all walk through.
Did you hear that was like a gift people were given before the episode? Like they were given boxes.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what does that have to do? And then I was like, oh, wow, that's why.
Yeah, those who attended the press screening were given that as a gift with their invitation.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Which I like. I've got my problems with Chibnall, but I've loved how he's dealt with the majority of the classic and returning monsters. We won't talk about the Sea Devils, but in terms of Cybermen, Daleks, and Sirens, he's handled them really, really well. I love his Cybermen. Yes, the Cyberman Masters are a ridiculous idea and they look camp as fuck, but I think he's made them menacing and forceful when they haven't always been in New Who. They've always, they've maybe played second fiddle to the Daleks a bit too much in New Who. And something else I liked about this, that actually they weren't playing second fiddle to the Daleks in this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, this is the thing. I think we said at the time that they got rid of Ashad too quickly, too easily, because the bit where he's bossing through the hallways and he's just literally gunning down people as he goes through the corridor, that it's made the Cybermen sort of good again, for want of a better term. The Daleks, I don't think you really needed to have them there, if I'm honest. No. That could have been completely all Cybermen, and you wouldn't need to have that.
I think the only reason they showed up is because it was an anniversary story.
That's it, and to sort of like there wasn't really that much cooperation between the three of them to a certain degree.
Hang on, no, they looked at each other doing that dance. Don't forget about that. That was cooperative. That was a moment of camaraderie. Look, I think the Daleks have two reasons. One, so the bit 100 anniversary BBC. Two, so Ace could hit one with a baseball bat.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Fair point.
I ain't gonna complain because Ace using that baseball bat is the best thing, and getting Graham to get some Nitro 9 is awesome. So I'm not gonna complain.
It is true. You you can't bring back Ace and not bring back the Daleks.
Yeah, I don't know. I just I think it was weird bringing Ashad back. Like, it was kind of obviously they explained it was a clone, and I was just like, okay. But like you said, that scenes where he was walking down those corridors shooting units, others, was like, it was cool to see him. Like, I have to say, my standpoint of like one of the things I loved about season 12 was the Lone Cyberman. And even though I didn't like what Chibnall did with Gallifrey, I actually really liked the Cyber Master. Was it Cyber Masters, Cyber Lords?
Cyber
Masters in this. I just think it's a really cool concept. But I have to admit, I just didn't. When I came to the Cybermen, like, I can tell they were only there to give Kate and Tegan something to do, and then obviously the Daleks are there to one anniversary and two Ace to back it with her. But,
yeah, I mean, at least the Cybermasters served a bit of a purpose for the plot.
yeah, the Cybermen did more than the Shards.
Without them, you don't get the regeneration energy, and you can't resolve that point. So I think it would have worked better without Daleks, but I can understand why they were there and why you have to have them there.
I think I just have to say about this episode, I think, because a lot of it had to do with some of the Cybermen stuff as well. I think visually and the shot types and everything that they had for this episode is generally some of the best stuff I've seen of New Who. Like, and like CGI wise, visually as well. Honestly, up there with Day of the Doctor as like visually, like CGI with like really good.
For me, there were a couple of bits that were clunky.
Yeah. I mean, the train scene maybe, but I think other than that,
I think no, there was a bit on the planet. There's a bit on the planet where is it the Doctor and Yaz are looking out across the sort of planet, and you can tell it's a green screen. You can see from a mile off it's a green screen. It's compared to what we've had before, it's wonderful. But I think that's the difference with Chibnall Who and the production value of Chibnall Who, that those moments do stand out.
Yeah.
Whereas previously they wouldn't necessarily have done so. Considering that the very end of this was directed by Rachel Talalay, Jamie Magnus Stone had a higher bar to kind of get up to, and I think he did so.
Yeah.
Did Rachel direct the ending then?
Yeah. The Tenant.
Oh, I thought it was him as well.
No, I think it may have just been the Tenant lines, so it may have just been literally the last 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Rachel directed certainly the bits with Tennant.
Right.
Someone who can do mid shots, not close ups. Because there's a lot of close ups.
Yeah, I'm not going to knock the direction of this episode, because I think, generally speaking, with the exception of those one or two bits of CGI that didn't quite work, I think generally speaking, it looked fantastic.
I think that shot with Ace going straight into the TARDIS is amazing.
Yeah,
for me, it's the first episode since maybe World of Enough and Time, Dr. Falls, that I sat and watched, and I kind of thought, I wish I was watching this in a fucking cinema.
Yeah,
I was lucky enough to watch it at cinema, and it was like a cinema room, and it was very, very entertaining.
Yeah. Right. Let's give about 2 minutes to this guy, because that's all he was in it. Instant V. Vinder came back in a very jagged role, and I think John's hit the nail on the head that this possibly could have been someone else originally, and they had to fill a gap because it does feel a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, as we know, the character of Vinder in Flux was essentially a rewrite. It was meant to be somebody else who was in the US and couldn't make it across due to COVID, which turned out to be a bit of a blessing in disguise, because they also couldn't keep their penis in their trousers while on set, it transpired. That's me and the podcast getting blocked on Twitter.
I don't care.
But yeah, I think that possibly that was something that was meant for Tosin, and Tosin wasn't available, so they had to rewrite it to bring Vinder in.
I wish they would have kept Tosin just in that pilot seat, just out of the blue, just him running a spaceship, just crashing down.
Because also he would have just blended into the background like he did all the time he was on the show. To be honest with you,
See, I would have wanted similar. I would have wanted him crash landing on the planet, but not in a spaceship, on a bicycle.
On a bicycle.
yeah.
He can now ride a bike. That's the arc.
I mean, that's the thing.
Just
there
like
you
a
go.
wormhole.
But no, I think Vinder had some cool moments. I liked the line, "I'm freelance." I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
but that was about it.
I mean,
I don't know.
That's what Vinder brings you, right? Like Vinder brings you deniability because he can do things that a companion can't, in the same way that Jack kind of could.
I don't know. It was a I actually completely forgot that Vinder was in this episode until John brought it up at the beginning of the the whole synopsis of the plot. So I was like, oh, yeah, Vinder was in this as well. Like, I mean, it's just a matter of those things that they needed to kind of tie it, like bring back. It was a lot of cameos this episode, so it was just one of those things.
It was basic. I mean, it was also basically Chris just going, let's get somebody else from Broadchurch.
Yeah, boy. Right.
Look, if I can make a slightly controversial point, and it's not from a point of misogyny as well, but because it is a very female-centric episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, maybe that's why they put Vinder in. But aside from that, I had no interest in him being there because, as far as I was concerned, his story is arc was finished. Yeah,
I mean, I'd have gone the other way, and I'd have brought Belle in rather than Vinder because, for me, she's prettier to look at.
Yes.
Also, she's got more of a character. I didn't mind Belle in Flux. Actually, I
want to see. I mean, I wanted to see a flash forward to Belle and Vinder's sort of grown-up child because they are two hot pieces of ass, and that would be one very good-looking human.
So with the whole rumors and stuff going around that Vinder's kid, there was like theories and stuff that Vinder's kid would turn out to be the Doctor. I was very scared about this episode of how much he would be in it. Obviously, I was happy to the end, but I'm not gonna lie. Right at the start of the episode, when they opened that cargo and it was like that kid, I was thinking either that's the timeless child or that is
that's Vinder's
kid or something. Yeah.
That's Vinder's kid.
Yeah. I thought it was a cool little cameo. I don't think he was there to serve a purpose. He didn't do too much. I thought it was all right.
I mean, Alex, you know what I'm going to say. It was a cool little cameo, but it should have been my boy Carvanista.
It should have been Carvanista. Where was Carvanista? Craig Ells was even in Legend of the Sea Devils. Why wasn't Craig Ells?
Clearly still with Belle. He's probably doing some babysitting.
That's the spin-off I want. Carvanista with the yet unborn child.
At home with the Vinders, Belle, Carvanista, the now born child, and Vinder, like the Flintstones.
It'd be like Stewie and Brian, but with like a 6 foot tall.
It'd be like the Flintstones. Like.
Alex, was it you that showed me
but Belle comes home and goes Vinder through the door.
Alex, wasn't it you that showed me it was obviously a fake, but it was the premiere
Dan proposing.
Dan proposed to Carvanista, and there was a point of me that I actually believed it for a second, and I was like, no, there's no way.
Right, I'm going to go on to what I'm going to call the 3 main pillars of this episode. I'm actually going to give one of them to Amanda Gill. I think she was stunning in this. I started to give her massive congratulations as I realised throughout the episode she's the only companion in history to actually appear in every single episode of a Doctor's run. So, fair play to her. Is she not? Because I was told that, so I'm incorrect.
Depending on what you count as a Doctor's run. So would you, for example, if you're not counting a Doctor appearing as a flashback or a flash forward, and you're not counting an extra episode, then I think Grace Holloway might want to have a word.
And I would count that for me, because I count the Doctor as canon, and I count it as my own nice little bow tie in the corner. But I
think it's something. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's a more worthy example, but I think it is something where, particularly Wilderness Years fans,
Hmm.
And those of us that love the Eighth Doctor would
Yeah.
put a point of order on.
That's all right. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't mean to rile up the Eighth Doctor fans, but I'm going to stick to my
Oh,
point.
don't worry, mate. They're too busy listening to their big finishes to be listening to you.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I'll say this. Congratulations to her for being in there the whole run and actually growing. I think there's a lot of complaints about Chibnall characters, and I'll agree with them that a lot of characters don't grow. Yaz is certainly one that you can't put there. For me, although the development has been late, I think even midway up to series 12, you could argue she ain't doing much. As soon as I hate to say it, as soon as Brad and Tosin left and the kind of space opened up, she really shone.
Yeah,
Really,
I would say congratulations on growing over the last 9 episodes.
yes. And genuinely, for me, becoming one of my favorites, I think she's been stunning. I think Mandip got what she deserved in this. Finally, a script that she could work with. And I think that she was brilliant, especially against Dewan. I like the fact that she was written as like it's a very assertive. She knew what she was doing. She was smart enough to play the master very well. I think that Yaz in this story was sublime and mate is up there to steal the show.
I think that it was her best performance by a country mile. I think a large part of that is because actually, it wasn't such a crowded TARDIS, and she had a lot to do because, even Jodie was out of action for fair bits of it. There's an argument that Mandip was the main character in this story. Because Jodie was either degenerated or off screen or a hologram or unconscious for fair bits of it. I'm really happy that actually she got to go out on a high. I'm maybe not entirely happy with the exit because I'd like to have seen her go on her own terms, but I think that I can understand why it wasn't written that way, but I would like to have seen her, having met Tegan and Ace, gone, actually, I realise that I can't be with you forever, and I'm going to go.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that final bit of agency would have sealed it nicely. Yeah, it is by far the best performance she's given. And that I would definitely agree with John's point that it being a less crowded thing, and the main midsection, your second act, is driven by her as an opposing force to Dwan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of Yaz, especially Thasmin, that sort of stuff. I think it was way too late to introduce. But I will admit I really liked her in this. It was kind of like I was finally happy with Yasmin. It was like it's been a long time coming, but I was satisfied. And not gonna lie, I was very scared that like I was very happy with the way she left, but for some reason I had like a little part of me that'd be like, oh, she would want to leave, and I was worried that it'd be like, I want to leave because you won't be the same person and I won't like you, so I'm gonna leave now. But glad they didn't go with that. But
yeah. I'm happy with the exit. Maybe again, it comes from my love of the era, but I think it was very clear that these two, it was shown on screen and set on screen. We'll talk about Thasmin in a second. But I think it showed these two do have a connection and something had to break it. I don't think either of them were going to leave each other. And this is what.
I just think it's a shame that we finally get to see Mandip as a strong female character in this episode, and she does it for 80 minutes, and then right at the end they turn her into a bit of a doormat. And I just think I don't think it was necessarily intentional, because I don't trust Chibnall to maybe have that much of a plan. But I think that the implications of that are something that he should have sort of noticed. And I mean, I can't I'm not in a position to speak for other people. I'm not a Thasmin shipper, but I am aware that if there's one group of people that are not fucking happy with how this is resolved, it's your Thassis.
Yeah.
Are they not happy at all?
No, God, mate, they wanted more.
They
Oh,
want
Jesus.
I mean, essentially, and you know, I'm not a gay person. I'm a heterosexual straight man, so I can't speak for other marginalised groups, but I do know that there is a strong feeling out there today that they've been queer baited.
Yeah, that's the sort of issue, isn't it?
And I don't think it's something that Chibnall intentionally wanted to do. I think it's just, we'll tease this, and then right at the end he bottled it.
Yeah, I think.
As always, he didn't stick the landing.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to speak for. I'm not going to try and speak for him, but for I can assume in his mind he was going, well, I don't know if they'll be happy if we get that moment and she dies minutes later. So I think he written himself into a corner of I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't.
I mean, and to be fair to him, he has said from the outset, from when he took over as showrunner, he has said he does not like Doctor Companion romances, and it wasn't something that he intended to do. You know, so he's stuck with his plan in the end. I'm just aware that it's upset a section of the fandom.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like this episode did have chemistry between the two characters, which is something that's I feel like I know some people have seen the chemistry like episodes ago, but it was this episode that really stood out that their chemistry actually kind of worked. And that last 10, that when they were sitting on the TARDIS having their final date, I did kind of, I felt like I understand maybe they were like, okay, maybe they were baited, but I still felt that, they don't have to kid. Like, you can still feel like there's been history and chemistry there. But I can understand why people are annoyed.
I mean, this is the issue with it coming late, isn't it?
This is I'm not going to say what went into my head because I'd end up slandering somebody and outing a medical problem. But you know what I'm thinking of.
Yes, I do.
But I mean, it was pointed out last night / this morning that Jodie is the only Doctor in New Who that has not kissed somebody.
True.
Yep.
Yeah, if we're being frank and honest and talking about Thasmin, while it may not have been Chibnall's original intention, right, he then has like gone in for it with the stuff with Dan, saying how you feel, do you realize, and there has been a progression with her character becoming more understanding of the feelings, expressing these feelings to the Doctor, and people have said that Chris Chibnall is sort of like a left and liberal, but his version of Doctor Who has been more right wing than anything else. And I would, to a certain degree, say he has queer baited, because now I'm not quite sure on what Janet Fielding and Sophie Aldred's input on it, but if you think about the history of the character, there was an implied lesbian relationship with Ace. There was an implied lesbian relationship between Nyssa and Tegan, but now Tegan has 2 ex-husbands and an adopted kid, and basically Ace is picking up Graham, saying, "Do you say that to a woman on the first date?" It's sort of like, how in a second? So there's a bit of queer bait. I believe, is that the right term? Queer baiting.
Yes.
I mean, I don't have a dog fight. I don't have a dog in this fight. So and I can't speak from that perspective because I think there has always been a queer element to Who, and as identifying representation has always been a massive part of this, and this has played a lot for a lot of young people. I'm not necessarily some like the people who were like very vitriolic about it, but like a lot of people who were a lot quiet about it. And it's been a lot of people who've been defending and championing the current show because of that part of it. And it's like you've gone 90% of the way, but when it comes to actually like doing it, you just backed away from it. You chickened out of it. You've either got to go all in on it or you don't. And like you said, then you could have had, like John made that very good idea or very good point of saying, I care about you, and you can still have a moment between them, and then saying, but I know I can't do this, and I've got to go for the sake of myself, in the same way that Dan did at the start of the episode. Yeah. And you don't lose any agency to it, and you can't like do something with all the preceding Doctors to this point and then abandon it. So you have really baited it. So you are reaping what you sow on this.
I mean, you look at say the queer representation in Russell's era. As a gay man, he was writing that a lot stronger. So maybe you kind of also have to ask yourself: is Chibnall as a straight man the right person to be writing that?
Yeah,
or at least bring someone in to help you deal with it in the right way.
Get somebody to come in and look and actually consult and say, this is what you need to be looking at, and this is what you need to be doing. This is what makes it real.
I mean, Moffat was a straight man, and I think he wrote Bill quite. I know she kept on bringing it up, the fact like it was kind of like out of the blue sometimes, but like I think that like Moffat handled gay characters quite well, like as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think the issue with this one is it came too late, and then I think again I've said it. Shut up, stop it. And then the issue is that he's damned if he did in this one and damned if he didn't, because if they did have a moment and then she died, I don't know. Again, I'm not the most knowledgeable. Isn't there a term for when the gay couple gets together and then one of them gets killed off?
You're saying it's a bury gays trope and everything like that.
Yeah. So,
but you have built up this bit where you get 90% of the way and everything like that, and you expect it and everything like that. And I know John says there's an issue with this iteration of the Doctor and expressing their feelings and everything like that. It's still like, well, I won't say goodbye, and it's like, oh well, fuck off then, see ya, and then that's it. That there's no actual reticence from the Doctor, like behind closed doors when the Doctor's on their own, that Yaz has gone either.
Yeah,
I think what you do get though is you do get that honesty from the Doctor that hasn't always been there when she looks at Yaz and she says, I need to do this bit on my own. She's actually very honest with her. She isn't keeping secrets from her, and she's like, I need to do this bit on my own. And my reading of that is that she doesn't want to change in front of Yaz, either because she doesn't want to be rejected by Yaz, or because she doesn't want her own feelings for Yaz to change in front of her.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot that's unsaid there, and it's almost Jodie keeping her distance for Yaz's own good.
I mean, that's a really good concept.
I just wish that it had been on Yaz's terms.
Yeah.
Right,
let's get into a more lighter topic. Kind of. It's gonna. I think this is where the tears might come out. Cameos and fun and everything that happened with this. There is some fun. There is some tears to be had. Let's have some fun, Terry. First, like you said, we see the Doctor after she has been forced to regenerate by the Master on some cliff edge, which reminded me of Avengers Endgame. I'm going to be honest. I was like, is she have to jump off to whatever? No. We just see that we see a bunch of Doctors sat on a rock, brilliantly. David Bradley's there, Colin Baker's there, Davison's there, McCoy's there, McGann's there in the costume. I've
been watching the show since 1985. Colin was my first Doctor. and I was okay until I saw Colin. Unfortunately, Colin comes up after about 30 seconds, so I cried through the entire fucking scene.
Yeah. Really good. Yeah, no, mate. I totally get it. It's one of those things where we'll get to the bit where I started crying later on. But yeah, it's really well done. The back and forth. It's good to see that although they never shared a scene together in the traditional sense. You still had the back and forth between them. I think it's a really smart way of bringing them in. I don't think it ever felt.
What do you mean the 5-ish Doctors is canon, isn't it? Oh no.
I saw a meme today. They finally did it. They finally got.
Well, I mean, don't forget. This is probably why they did it. This is giving the guys that didn't get a crack of the whip in the 50th a go.
Yeah, I feel like this is why they're doing this now. I feel like this is very this episode is very classic heavy, and that's fine. But I understand why, is because the 60th was revolved around New Who and the 50th revolves around New Who, but this revolved around classic.
I mean, there are gonna be some elements of classic in the 60th.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, there will. But it'll focus more on New Who, probably. But,
It will be more about a celebration of David and Catherine. I'm still hopeful that Billy might show up at some point. You never know.
You know who I'm waiting for.
She's very busy. Alex can't wait for a return of Adam Mitchell.
Oh, shut up!
It takes away from the 60th the burden, which I would expect as a writer is very hard to say. Well, I've got to do a multi-Doctor special.
Yeah, and introduce a new Doctor
at the same time. Yeah.
I think this was perfect. I mean, I was shot down immediately by Reese when I was watching this, but I was saying, McGann in the costume, is that a little flake to potentially go, he still looks good in it, he can still go, let's give him a run.
I think it's a little bit of also a nod to the fans, because he's the one that sort of has been the square peg with the round hole. Because
also, he wasn't there, was he? He wasn't there on set. It was only his face they used. It was only.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. It was only his face that they used. The rest was someone wearing the costume.
Yeah. But yeah, because he's always been like TV movie, it hasn't always fit within obviously the TV show type of stuff. So he's always been like outside of it. So he can always be the outlier. And I like that. I think that's more of like an in-joke for the fans, that he's not wearing the cossies.
Russell is all about building a universe, and he said that all along. It wouldn't surprise me if we do get a McGann spin-off run. There's a part of me, and there are certain Tennant fans that would shoot me for saying it. There's a part of me that would have loved to have actually seen McGann be the 60th.
Yeah.
And like have these 3 specials, because unlike everybody else, he only looks about 5 years older than he did 30 years ago. But I think there's something to run with McGann potentially, and a lot of it will come down to fan reaction. And the biggest fan reaction from last night with the Doctors seems to be McGann.
And it's the first time McGann's been in a full-length TV episode.
Yeah.
I mean, David Bradley was, I think, very shocking to me. I really didn't expect him to see that. I mean, I heard rumours that actually McGann, I didn't hear rumours about that, but I heard rumours about Sylvester Davidson and Colin Baker that they would be in the episode, but I didn't know anything about David Bradley or McGann, and it was really nice seeing them again.
I'd heard McGann, but I'd heard it was a voice appearance. So to actually see his face was very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into the more interesting moments. So a couple of the Doctors got more to do than others for the right reasons. Obviously, like Johnson in his explanation, Jodie very blatantly later on goes, "Oh, I've hit you with static shock." And that essentially allows this hologram version of Jodie, which has been with Mandy throughout the story, to help the other companions as well. We get some wonderful moments. We first see Peter Davison's version of the Doctor go to Tegan in a tremendous scene. I love the line of the Cyberman in here. You know what I must be thinking, and all Davison has to say is one word, and that one word is Adric. And as he says that, the hologram fades and it becomes him actually in the room, which is a lovely visual connotation as well, which I only picked up on rewatch. And that back and forth between them is incredible. I loved as well, we got a bit of an add-on of I never forgot you, I never forget anyone. You can do this. It's sort of that get up and go. I'm happy it was him.
But I liked that they started with a joke as well.
Yeah.
Because she looks at him and she says, "You look the same but different," and he's, "Well, so do you." And the fact that they're both 40 years older, I think I love that they referenced that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the minute Adric got mentioned, I went, and then you got Braveheart Tegan, and Beef can probably do this justice more than me because you watched the Davison era first.
Oh yeah. That was the Doctor that I grew up with, and pretty much when I started watching the show. So it's a massive significance thing. It sort of it encapsulates the relationship that there always was professionally, on screen between Tegan and the Doctor, the personal relationship that they have off screen between Janet Fielding and Peter Davison, and the charm comes through. To give you an idea, I think what makes it absolutely, rings it really true as well, is that Tegan hasn't appeared on screen for the best part of getting on for nearly 40, well, no, not as long as nearly 40 years. And both of, Davison obviously came back during Time Crash, but it's like no time has passed. They have just picked up the beats of these characters straight away. And it's beautifully done. To have one word undercut, first of all, you see the vulnerable side to Tegan, because up until that point, you've only really seen the bullshit aspect of it, and then you cut to something that is that, and the whole part is just underplayed with one word, which is Adric, which is something that the fans have always said has never been addressed, because it has been like 40 years since that happened. The first time a companion, a proper companion has actually died. So it was a very significant thing, and it was beautifully done. It did. It really hit you in the remember berries. Yeah, that's for sure. And I think that's what those ones were meant to do, and the nostalgia elements, superb.
Yeah.
Done.
We also got one as well with the pairing of Ace and the Professor. We finally get Syl coming back going Ace, and I love it. And we get a lovely bit where he goes, I never said that you shouldn't blow things up, but you should always look for another avenue before that, because I think it also shows the layers of their relationship, because anyone that's seen those two together for those two amazing seasons of Classic Who, it was always not a Doctor companion, it was always a professor student type relationship where the Doctor was always teaching her things rather than she was just running around going on adventure with the Doctor. She was learning from the Doctor. So for them that to finally come together, I thought was really cool.
So, did you feel, and I'm asking this as a genuine question, I have a little bit of an idea of how the Doctor and Ace's relationship ends, because obviously it doesn't end on screen, it ends in the novels. Did you feel in any way kind of left out by the fact that they're referencing this, or do you feel that actually they covered that quite nicely and you didn't need to know more?
I think nice enough, because I think that time's passed. I think obviously when we pick up in the TV movie, he's not with her anymore, and I think that you can there's a lot of things to be said about the unspoken thing. There's enough. I think Sophie, although she may not have as much emotional stuff to chew on in this story, she's very good at how she uses her words, in what emotions she's telling. Although there might not be much expression, you can tell in the way she delivers lines how she feels. And I think Ace is very much more forgiving, as we find out in that scene. So as soon as Jodie's back in it, and she's back in the Avenger, she's calling Jodie Professor. She's loving it. I think you can tell that there's always been that love there, despite that disconnection somewhere, wherever it's happened.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's going to significantly increase the value of the 35 Virgin New Adventures that I've got sat in a box next to me at the moment. I'm working my way through.
Find out.
Find out why the Doctor and Ace fell apart.
Yeah,
these scenes were obviously. I think I did watch, because I remember I watched the episode where Adric died. So Tegan wasn't. Yeah, that's the one. I used to watch them on like Watch back in the day when they were just on. But I remember that because I remember Adric. No, even though these, I didn't have the chemistry between the two. It was really nice seeing them, and like a lot alongside with the cameos. I feel like to sum up this episode, I don't know if you've watched it or anything, but I told Alex, I know you haven't watched this, but this episode for me is an equivalent of the Book of Boba Fett, which is a lot of cameos and a lot of references and a lot of good cameos and all that, but the storyline sadly isn't brilliant. But yeah, that's how I really summed up this episode, because even though the cameos are good, I don't think the plot could have saved it. But yeah.
Sweet. I think that's a fair enough assessment. I mean, I don't know specifically what you're referencing.
Sorry.
But no, that's fine, because other people will. A lot of people did watch that. I'm just one few I didn't. I think that's a fair assessment. I wanted to leave the last bit of the review to talk about Jodie, because I think it's only fair.
I think in terms of the cameos, do we not also need to just talk about the group scene at the end?
Oh, yeah. I was gonna quickly leave that the regeneration kind of area. We can do that now.
I think it's a good idea to cover that in its own right, because you don't, that way you're doing Jodie justice by talking Jodie at the end.
Sweet, yeah. So yeah, as John said in his lovely synopsis, we get a kind of companions, support group kind of chat, and we get a few people there. We get the established people from the episode, so we do get Dan, Graham, Yaz. Kate Stewart's there as well, Tegan and Ace. But we do get a few surprises in there. We get the return of Manly Bush, who somehow got off that planet from Dragonfire. Somehow.
Well, I mean, we know how she got off the planet in Dragonfire. We just don't know how she got back to Earth after traveling with Glitz.
Yeah.
We also get the return of Katie Manning as Jo Grant in a wonderful moment. And my
favourite moment of the entire episode was hearing that laugh.
Yeah. That laugh that we
you
all
can
love.
tell that a mile off.
Yeah, that literally there was, like you said before, there was a large chunk of us knew she was going to be in it, but you could, as soon as we heard that laugh, we went, yeah.
Katie is a close personal friend of the group.
Yeah.
I really don't know why it's taken this long to do something like that in the show, because I feel like it's such a good concept. Like, it's very, like, I love that. Even though, I've not really seen anything with Buddy Langford or Ian, and I was like, whoa, it's them. It was really good.
And then you get the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Ian coming back. Wow, this one got you in the feels.
The Guinness World Record holding William Russell, who, as of last night, probably holds the world record for the longest gap between playing the same character on screen.
Yeah.
In a tremendous little thing. Like, people were discussing their adventures with the Doctor, especially our new companions, and he just goes wonderfully, sorry, did you say she? And it's a perfect, because, like, I think it's what John, you said this wonderfully yesterday to me on Zoom. He doesn't understand the concept of generation. He's never seen one. So not only is talk about these new faces a bizarre concept, but also the concept in general is just a strange thing to him.
It's I mean, he was effectively kidnapped.
Yep.
Yeah. I loved that. I loved the fact that there was an empty chair. I've seen a few theories of that. The one that I like is that it was there to represent everybody who couldn't be there, not just in terms of companions, but in terms of fans and viewers and friends that we've lost along the way, which I think was beautiful.
Was
Um,
there a photo frame on that chair? Because I've seen
It was a laptop.
It was a laptop.
it's a laptop, right?
Yeah, there was a laptop. It
Because
could
I thought that it would have been a photo frame, and they might have cut that in the edit or something, and they would have showed that.
the
No.
laptop. So it could have been it's available for anybody to zoom in. So Martha could zoom in, Ryan could zoom in, could be anyone.
I did wish we saw some, like, maybe someone from, like, you know, maybe I was expecting maybe someone like Martha, or even to represent someone like Liz Sladen, like Luke or Rani or someone like that. It would have been quite nice.
I think that's why you got the Croydon reference.
Yeah.
You know, that Croydon reference, I think was the homage to Liz. I think they deliberately left this ambiguous because you can take your own from it. It could. So some people would say, actually, that's there for Sarah Jane. Some people would say that's there for Debbie Watling. Some people would say it's there for Michael Cray. It's there for Jacqueline Hill. It's there for every companion that we've lost.
Or Ryan, because he's still cycling somewhere. I don't know,
yeah, or Ryan, or somebody who was due to appear but apparently was otherwise engaged that day gardening.
Yeah, it's down to the viewer to fill the chair with whoever they see.
You know, my personal little headcanon of it is that it's there as a representation for all of us.
Yep.
For, you know, because we've all been fans of this show for a long time. We all know people that we've lost that have been fans of this show, that we got to know through this show. And I you know, for me, that chair means what you want it to.
I was expecting to see Elton from Love and Monsters just around that, but
with
I think
the pavement slab. With the pavement slab.
But I think maybe a talk about the Doctor will, you know, in a chat will kind of give him trauma. So I'm glad he wasn't there.
I mean, but for me, what the group, it's an idea that I came up with earlier. I think that actually the group is something that Graham has specifically set up to support Yaz.
Yeah.
Now, because he goes in and it's clear that it's the first meeting because they're doing the introductions and stuff. But he goes in and he says, I was thinking about this, that, and the other. But it's like, then why didn't you set this up years ago? Yeah. But actually, Graham is somebody who knows what it is like to lose a loved one and grieve, knows the way that Yaz feels about the Doctor. I think he has specifically set that up to support Yaz through the process of moving on.
Yeah. I also like as well how that one shot at the start paralleled them when you fell to earth at the end. But this is sort of an optimism bit, whereas that was obviously a very sad bit with Grace. So optimistic thing, he goes, I don't know how I'm going to talk about this, things like that. I also like the fact that this scene allows us to have a couple minutes of Bradley Walsh and John Bishop, the two funny men of the era, have a little bit of a back and forth, however brief it is. This man, like you say, John, I mean, I think any Who fan or whoever will get a lot of this scene, but I think it represents us as well. It just, as people, we sit on Zooms, we could sit in chairs, we could talk about the Doctor. It felt like they became us for a bit as well. It was a really nice moment.
I'd been gone for about 5 minutes by this point, and I just kept going.
Yeah,
you know, because it was there for the fans. It was absolutely, it represents us. It represents people that sit around and talk about the Doctor's adventures.
Yeah. Absolutely. And speaking of the Doctor's adventures, unfortunately, for one of my favourites, this was her last. Obviously, this represents Joe Wicker's last story, who I think smashed it. And this might be coming from a place of love, and I might be biased, but I think she knocked it out of the park. Does she get sidelined technically within the story? Yeah, but is she still in it? Absolutely. And that's the important thing.
You know what, Alex? Yes, you were always going to love it. Yes, you were biased. But for once, that doesn't matter.
You're allowed to. Yeah.
This is your Doctor's regeneration story. If like this was for you, so what you, and this is the only time I'm ever going to say this to you on this fucking podcast. But for once, what you think is actually more important than what anybody else thinks. Because you're the demographic of this episode.
I'll try not to cry. I'll try not to cry. I'll try and get through as much as I can. I said this. I
knew I was going to make you do that.
I said this last night. This era represents more to me than just the show, because through this era of the show, I've met some of the best friends and people I would call family and people that I love so much. And it's been such a difficult time for being through a pandemic to move into an entirely different city by myself. And I've loved it all. And I really like her. Like the reason I've latched on to Jodie is because she is the exact character that I needed at that exact point in my life. Somebody who would bring the joy without any kind of, pessimism. Every time that I need an optimistic kind of lift me up, I could go any Jodie episode because she was always there. She was always happy through the dark times. She was always the one that would bring the light in every kind of situation. Was the show always the best? No. But one thing I will say is I think for me, her performance always shone. And I will miss her. I not only as the Doctor, but as the figurehead of this show. I cannot fault her one bit. She had to be the Doctor at the time where it was the most difficult time to be the Doctor through a pandemic where nothing could happen, and she was still there. She was still doing stuff for this show. And for that, I cannot fault her. I will still remember in the early days of the pandemic where she was in that what was she in, like a closet? Saying she was cupboard hiding from the Sontarans, which is incredible. I loved it. I loved all of this. I loved the regeneration. I love the last bit on the TARDIS. I get it's not a big grand speech, but I think we've had enough of big grand speeches. And actually for this one to be a bit more quiet was quite nice. And I love the way she said it to you guys. Nobody got to be us. I've loved every second of it because there's every point of the regeneration where you kind of feel like it's not the Doctor talking anymore. It's the actor. And I've always loved that element. And
I thought she was shit. No. I know. I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. No, there's a part of me that has enjoyed this era. Like in a way, it's divided the fans a lot. It's divided the fans a lot. And I've not been a big fan of Chibnall. I've not been a big fan of Jodie. But I think in this episode, you're right. I think she did deliver her best performance. I think, and you were right, she didn't need it. I think her final words on that cliff it just sums her up. I think, honestly, like the last 10 minutes will go down as somewhat, if not one of my favorite moments of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It was just brilliant.
I loved the whole, I'm going to be honest, I think Tag, You're It might be one of my favorite last lines of any Doctor.
Because it just sums her up. Yeah.
A big overblown speech would have felt incredibly out of character. But I think that those lines, something playful and
optimistic,
something playful and a little childlike and optimistic and excited for the future, I think was just perfect. And I would not be the third Doctor stan that I am if I didn't point out that as she steps out of the TARDIS, she says that it's the blossomiest blossom she's ever smelled. Yeah. And I was like,
yeah.
She's been a wonderful ambassador for this television show. Any issues that I've had with this era have not been with her. When you meet her,
I would love Russell to revive her in some way.
When you meet her, she is an absolute ray of light. She's one of the most welcoming, relaxed, friendly people you can possibly meet. And I love her to bits, and I'm gonna miss her. And I'm just very happy that she went out on a high.
Yeah. And tremendously. And I think, like I said, I think it's going to be one of my favorite regenerations because I think it's nice because the thing is, apart from Parting of the Ways, which, by the way, I think I said this yesterday on you guys on Zoom, I think there's only two regeneration stories for me that are legitimately good in the modern era, which is Parting of the Ways and this one. I know I love Time of the Doctor, but I will say it has its flaws, and I will always stick to the Doctor Fall should have been Capaldi's last one because it's brilliant and nothing will be able to top it. But I love the fact that in her regeneration, kind of, she got to spend it with a companion because
Day of the Doctor is technically a regeneration story.
okay, sure, that one's good. But that one's good. I can't lie. I think it came like it was in our top 10, wasn't it? I'm not gonna.
It was.
But you know, I like that she got to share it with a companion because the Eccleston one was obviously explaining regeneration, whereas this time we didn't need to do that. The Clara one was changing over to a new guard in Capaldi and an entirely different Doctor. So there was elements of it. The show won't change, and it didn't change. Thankfully, Capaldi was sensational. This time we just got able to have a conversation between two people that cared about each other a lot. And I valued that really highly. And like you say, John, there is nothing better than her getting those last few moments on her own. I think it's so of the character. I didn't think of it on that level that you did early on when you mentioned about, maybe she didn't want Yaz to see her as someone else. And maybe those thoughts would go. And we get to the cliff edge and we get to regenerate with Taguret, and in comes their friend David Tennant.
Introducing David Tennant as the Doctor.
Yeah.
As if none of us have ever heard of him anymore before.
The fact that I have to wait a year and a month for this bloody stuff to come back, I was gutted because I heard all this stuff about it coming back. And throughout the year, but no, 3 specials in November.
Mate of mine was saying this earlier, but what you got to think about is right. Series 14 starts shooting next month. We're going to have costume reveals. We're going to have companion reveals. There's going to be a lot drip fed to us over the coming year, both about the 60th and about what's to come with Shooty. Because it's Russell, and Russell is all about the promotion and putting stuff out there. I think there's going to be a lot to keep us occupied over the coming year. I can't wait to see what's to come.
No Christmas and New Year's though.
Yeah.
That's something I'm sad about.
But then thinking about it, having 3 60th anniversary specials that are likely going to be linked by a narrative.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Going together is a good idea. I think separating the months apart only works if you've got 3 separate episodes, and I'm pretty sure that these are going to be linked by a narrative.
Yeah, I will get into our theories of what could come quickly at the end. I do want to say that I think this is meant to be I think it might be just a me thing. But I was thinking as well, Russell was very adamant on giving Jodie her time. I think he wouldn't have wanted to come straight in because if you think about it, if we had a Christmas or New Year's, he would be promoting the shit out of that already. So the week after Jodie goes, if he's already promoting the new stuff instantly, I don't think he would have wanted to do that. He was from the off of when he got announced, he was like, I want to give Jodie her time. I want this to be her time. So to have a little gap as well, I think there's
a brilliant 90-minute episode coming out soon.
And I'd say he didn't bullshit, in my humble opinion. But yeah, I think that's obviously we get David Tennant saying those iconic words about the teeth, the what. But they're interestingly the costume change, which could be something I want to discuss in our potential 60th thoughts and theories. But quickly, guys, let's do scores on the doors and wrap up.
Oh shit! Hang on.
Yeah, you can just make up a number, mate. It's not very
no,
still.
That's right.
But Beef, I want to go to you first because this is genuinely this is not a blight on you. This is the first. I think it's one of the only times that we've had a Whittaker review with you on it, and you've actually seemed to take more positive things than negative, which is not me trying to have a go. It's just observation.
Yeah. No, the acting has never been an issue with me, to be honest with you. I'm going to give it a 7. The reason being is A, the nostalgia, B, the performances. I do feel the queer baiting thing was a big issue for me, to be honest with you, that they never finished off with it. The timeless child thing never got addressed. The flux thing is just dangling about. It left so many. It sort of. Chris Chibnall has basically been the biggest drag down for this, because he will start an idea and abandon it. And that's been a problem with not just stories, it's been a problem with arcs, it's been a problem with characters that has run throughout his tenure. And that's why I haven't scored this episode higher. There were issues that I found with this episode specifically with regards to some like the green screen special effects and some of the camera stuff. I would have liked it to have been less complicated, to spend more time on the character stuff that I feel would have served it better, and perhaps served the Doctor better to address the Master-Doctor relationship from the Doctor's side, because that's never really been touched upon and was just left hanging. Yeah. So, yeah, I was pleased and I had fun with it. And if I can come away from a Chris Chibnall episode and say I have fun, well, then that's a sort of that's the best thumbs up I can sort of give. And yeah, that's it. Way for the future now.
Cool. John, next up you, mate. I don't know what you could score this. Normally I've got an idea. I don't know where you'll pop this.
I'm interested to know what you would have predicted now.
I've got an idea, but shall I say it?
No, keep it in your head and tell me after I've done it. As yourself and well-established listeners of this podcast podcast series will know, I've got a little bit of a rule in that I can only give something 10 out of 10 if I consider it to be perfect. Because then you're saying that actually that can't be improved on. It's something that I've always stuck to. It's just one of those things. It's a little bit of a sort of OCD nerdy thing. It's just like, well, 10 out of 10 means you're saying that's perfect. This wasn't perfect. There were some issues once or twice with the CGI. There were some issues in terms of the plot and too much going on. Then I think about how this made me feel. I think about how this made me feel last night. I think about how I felt at points over the last 4 years being a fan, being quite an active online fan, getting abuse for some of the views that I've had. And I sat there last night and I was like, you know what? It's almost been fucking worth it to see this. So probably the only time I'm ever going to do this, I'm going to break my rule, and this gets 10 out of 10 from me.
Well, I was wrong.
Where do you think I was going?
I was thinking we were going to give an 8.
Okay.
I was thinking 8. Right, Ash, have you had enough time to think of a score?
If you had asked me first watch when I saw this, my initial thoughts was this was Chibnall having a wank, and this is what he made. And it was just a lot of fan stuff and all this and that. But, after second watch, first watch, I would have given it a 4, maybe 5. But with how much I liked a lot more the second time watching it, and even though I do have problems, that last 10 minutes will always stick to me as a really good moment in the show's history. And because of that, I will give it a 6.57 out of 10.
Fair. I don't think I need to say, do I? I'm going to give it a 10. And I rarely give 10s. I've only given 10s to a few stories, Vincent the Doctor being one of them. I think there's maybe 6 or 7 10s out of 10s on that spreadsheet. We did have
Puncher being another.
Being another one, yeah. But no, this for me gets a 10.
Yeah.
For kind of the reasons,
esteemed company.
It's rare that me and John can say this to a T, right? But I absolutely everything that John just said it's the same thing for me. There are issues with it. I don't think it's perfectly written, but how it made me feel, what it did for me, it has to get a 10 because I've never had a moment watching Doctor Who and feeling like that. And
Yeah. I'm not sure I've ever felt happier being a Doctor Who fan than I did at the end of that last night, because I went online and people were almost united in their love of it. Yes, there were some that weren't fans, fair enough, but generally speaking, people were united over it.
yeah, exactly. And it was good to see throughout the day as well. The thank you Jodie hashtag going on Twitter as well was a nice little bow.
There's that. Oh, what is it? Not my doctor stuff going on at the moment, though.
There's always going to be, isn't there?
Oh,
Yeah.
God, what you see, Not My Doctor has evolved, so we're now getting people saying that Tennant is not their doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all kicking off.
It's all confusing.
But yeah, so there you go. That's the wrap up on this one. We're now going to be discussing quickly 60th stuff. So at the end of this, we see Tennant. He's back in a different costume. His costume changed in Regeneration. Now, isn't that a bit weird? I personally think this is the work of a certain Neil Patrick Harris as a celestial toy maker manipulating certain things. I don't know why I don't think he specifically needs Tennant. I think he specifically needs Donna. I don't know why. I just think it might be the case because there has to be a reason the toy maker chose this specific face, this specific attitude. Obviously, I think although it's a different incarnation, as Russell said, this is the 14th Doctor. I do think we're going to see a lot of the same Tennant mannerisms in a sense. I think they will have maybe a darker side and a more knowledgeable side and what have you. But I think we will get a lot of the Tennant best bits, if you like. But
I think we'll see a markedly different performance, because what we need to bear in mind is that this isn't the 10th Doctor, this is the 14th Doctor. This is a Doctor who knows that he didn't use the moment. And the impact that had on 9 and 10, you cannot underestimate. Now he knows.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. Obviously, I agree with you, John, that you mentioned earlier. I think this will be a 3 connected specials kind of trilogy. With a bit of 60th fan stuff going on in there.
I mean, you don't get Neil Patrick Harris in for 10 minutes.
No.
I can see I can see there being an overarching arc. I think that's why they're showing all 3 episodes together. I mean, we're all gonna absolutely lose our shit and need to have the hankies ready when Bernard shows up.
But yeah.
He thought last night was bad.
Yeah.
It's David and Catherine together, probably the best chemistry that we've had between a Doctor and companion in the new series.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, we're getting a brilliant, exciting, fresh new Doctor. Which just from one line of delivery, I'm already in love with.
I was shocked. I was very shocked to see him in that trailer.
I don't think it's the end of the specials where we see Ncuti Gatwa pop up. And this is just it might be the dumbest thing I've ever said.
In spite of the fact that he stood there in Tennant's tattered costume.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because Ncuti Gatwa goes, what the hell is going on here? Which means he hasn't regenerated knowingly, or he's confused as to why he is where he is or what's happening. So if it is toy maker manipulation, we might be seeing a bit of a flip. I think we'll see more of Ncuti in these specials than just at the end. That is,
I think so.
It's based on a very small.
I think that's possible, but in terms of like his availability for filming,
I don't know. I think that he won't. I think that he will pop up randomly throughout it, but at the same time, because I doubt they would have filmed the end of it all now. Like I know they're shooting season 14 next week, but this is coming out in a year's time.
These specials are wrapped.
All of them.
Yeah.
Are they?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, never mind that.
But no,
I mean, clearly, Ncuti has shot something sort of under wraps, if you like, because the whole thing was he's not starting filming until next month, and he's been doing sex education. I'm wondering if Russell announced him back in May, just before they started filming the specials, because of a fear of it leaking at some point. So
Yeah.
him having an involvement in the specials.
I mean, how does, well, supposedly, if Matt Smith are in these, I want to know how he ties into.
Please
all
don't
these.
tempt me. I was thinking it was going to be this one, and it wasn't. I'm in pain. I want to see my Matt. I told everyone when David Tennant was announced, I was like, "This is really cool for her." I'm not going to take it when people.
I mean, I was expecting them to do. Sorry, Alex. I was expecting, you know, when all the doctors were in this episode, I was generally tempting they were going to do something like that, but then I was like, they're way too busy with other stuff. Like they would get, you know, and I thought, oh, they could have Tennant because he's in it, but I was like, that would just confuse. That would just, there would be no point showing him there and then at the end as well.
I'm still holding out hope we might get a little something from Matt Smith, but that's just the inner fanboy me, and it being the 60th. That if you're ever going to do it, it'd be now.
No,
you should watch House of the Dragon instead. You get to see his bum.
Yeah, I know. I've been told you to see a bit more than just his bum, but
you do. It's blurry, but yeah, you do.
But yeah, no, I'm excited for this new era. I think the more I see of it, the more I like it. I was very sort of. I think this is going to be weird. I don't mean this like literally, because that's not the case. But I think part of my brain was a bit jealous of when Tennant and Donna was announced, because everyone was like, "Oh, the nostalgia." And I didn't get that, right? It wasn't that I was like, "Oh, this is shit," because I didn't think that either at the time it was announced. I was never against it. I just was like, "Oh, it's not my era." But the more I see of it, the more I'm like, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be 3 episodes from 2008 just put in 2020. Something is happening here. Something is different. I'm happy that this is the 14th Doctor. I'm happy we didn't get some degeneration, because that would have been really weird. Although I'm happy that RTD is having some bants on Instagram, giving no shits.
I think, like we've said before as well, Russell T Davies is a very different writer to the guy that did the show back in the day. Yeah. I think, like John says, this is a different Doctor. So although the casing is the same, the software will be different. In a sort of a bit of a twist around, to be honest with you. So, and it'll probably be a harder edge to it. Yeah, you've had Time Lord Victorious and everything like that running during the pandemic on extended media. I think you are going to have a different thing to it. Yeah, it will be interconnecting. I very much doubt you'll get Matt Smith, but I think it will be. I mean, just getting flashes of Shooty, I think going through it is going to be good. I think, will we see the sort of edge of reality that we had in this episode taken as a concept as to where we see Shooty's incarnation? Who knows? But I'm just glad as well that we're sticking with regional accents as well. Still as well.
I mean, I'm not going to go into it because it's something that was told to me privately by a source, but there is something that I'm expecting from the 60th anniversary to pop up at some point that will actually make me lose my shit, like significantly more than last night did. I'm happy to go into that off air.
Cool.
But there is something that I'm expecting to happen that will make me completely lose the plot.
I think, I don't know, I'm very excited for this new, because obviously, like, I know it's very nostalgia-y that, you know, these people are coming back, but, you know, when I started watching the show, I watched, my first episode was ever Boomtown, but David Tennant was my first Doctor.
Good episode as well. First good episode as well. Like Boomtown.
I think I watched it because it was set down the bay, and I was like, hey, so it's really nice seeing David back, and it's especially nice seeing Donna, because 2008, that was, like, when I say a year of Doctor Who, that was everything. Like, everything in my life was Doctor Who, and I'm so excited that stuff is coming back. But like I said, I'm excited to see what Russell can bring, because obviously he's changed since that writer back in the day, and I do hope he can finish his stories quite well, because I know he's very good at setting stuff up and all this sort of stuff. And he does it. He finishes stuff off quite well in a lot of his episodes. But I think I hope there's nothing like the end of Last of the Time Lords, just all like all quick and all that, and like the Dalek control system and Jenny's End. I hope there's not stuff like that. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see where the show goes.
I'd love the support group to come back as they welcome a new member. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah. That would be great. I'm excited to see how I don't want to say retcon, because that always seems like a negative term to me. But I'm interested to see what they do with Donna's character and how she's allowed to move. Is that the toy maker? Again, I'm thinking that if it is, it's not been announced as toy maker, but
I'm just pleased that she's still married to Danny Glaze off the bill.
Go on, Donna. I'm excited to see her back.
I'm excited to see where Rose goes, as in Rose is now the daughter, because the fact that Russell's come out and announced her as a big character, then she must have probably an impact on maybe where the show's going as well.
I'm most excited to see Rachel Talalay behind the lens of a Doctor episode.
Yeah, I mean, you don't give a character that name and then have her be a bit part in Doctor Who.
Yeah,
there's clearly something significant going to be going on there.
Yep, absolutely. And hopefully, like you say, John, we will find some different things out throughout the year that we could do more podcasts on. Like when things get announced, will we get a companion announcement?
I mean, supposedly keep your eyes out for the next copy of DWM, because they're bigging it up significantly and saying it's going to be stellar.
Cool. I know who me and you are waiting to hopefully hear, John, as the next companion, but we don't know. We can only hope.
I live in hope.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this one. This one was a bit longer, obviously, I've been away for a while, so it was a nice kind of detox, have a nice little chat about a lot of stuff. As always, you can follow John on Twitter at JohnBoy_Cook. You can follow the Beefhead at the Beefhead. I messed it up. I suppose I should shout out your TikTok. That's kind of futile because you've got like 1,000% more following than I do on it. Is it like 250k? Is it?
No. 100 and some 100.
I've oversold you now.
Yeah.
That's still pretty impressive.
Yeah, no.
Arshan GT, isn't it?
Arshan.gt if you want to follow that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he does a lot of comments, especially about Paddington and La Crocodile. Any live action film with an animal in it is where you go.
My last thing I want to add about this next stuff: Shooties did not expect a mustache, and David Tennant looks very fucking good. Yeah, like he looks very good. But yeah,
I cannot wait. And Arshan, thank you for joining the show for the first time. I'm sure I'll be back. You didn't cause any shit, so we'll allow you back in at some point.
That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, you can follow the show at the Timeless Pod. You follow me on Twitter for some reason at @King_Dom. And yeah, normally we would ask for reviews, but I think this one was just too long, and I think it would have just. I needed to detox. There was too much time, and I won't have time for this one. We'll be back at some point. I'm not going to make a schedule right now. I will go back to weekly at some point. But as Arshan knows, uni is absolutely chock-a-block at the minute. There's so much to do that going into Premiere Pro after I've been in days of Premiere Pro is not what I want to be doing. So I'll be back at some point, whenever that will be. I cannot wait. Thank you guys so much. Take care. We'll see you later. I'll leave you to John to send us off.
Good night. God bless. Don't have nightmares. Do sleep well. Tag, you're it.